Barcelona at right back have been not bad, but not great for a really long time. And that's probably partly due to the fact that Alves was a really rare player, because no one would describe him as a fullback really. Like, he played there, but the range of things he could do was just absolutely amazing. I always think of, I think it was at Parc des Princes against PSG, and I think Leo Messi scored a waft of an outside right pass that he cut through his goal. That's amazing. Very, very few fullbacks in history that could ever do that. So him coming back, he's not coming back as a 28-year-old massively enthusiastic, has sort of boundless energy for the game, but also about what Barcelona were under Guardiola and Bruno Even though he didn't come through at Barcelona, he has a passion for that way of playing. And I think this is a during a period of restoration when you're trying to you're trying to put a club back on course, it's like reattach it to its ideology. I think it's a fair way of looking at what Xavi would be expected to do. I think it's very useful. Someone who is a kind of another steward for that way of thinking, for another advocate for that way of playing. And I think if you think about the young players in that team, so obviously Gavi, Pedro, Gavi was fantastic tonight. If you haven't watched the Spain-Sweden game, watch his performance, like, just amazing. He seems to have just been dropped into senior football and looks like he's been playing for a decade.
The false nine. But is there a reason as to why all these clubs are using it? Stick around to find out. Before we get into the details, let's first define the role of the false nine. The false nine is a unique type of centre forward. Traditionally, the number 9 would be the team's focal point high up the pitch, pressing on the opposition's back line and looking to get on the end of any crosses. However, the false 9 will tend to drop deep into the midfield and help with the team's possession play. He is much more involved in build-up compared to the standard striker, and is tasked with the complementary role of providing through balls and freeing up space for the wide forwards and attacking midfielders to exploit. It's most effective when playing with many attacking players, such as the 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 or 4-1-4-1 formation. Typically, when the opposition is facing a false 9, one of two things are likely to happen. The first is what creates the most danger, which is one of the centre-backs coming out of the defensive line to close down the centre-forward. By doing this, however, the wingers can exploit this gap, which can be very difficult to defend against. The second thing that can happen is that the centre-backs hold their position and sit back. Well, this can be arguably just as dangerous, as it allows the team to have more space between the lines, and can allow them to overload the midfield. Depending on where the team is on the pitch, then the false 9 will be positioned in a way to help the team gain ground. When in the defensive third, he can come short and collect any ball from the defensive line. In fact, the false 9 is fantastic for teams wishing to use counter-attacking to their advantage. Secondly, when in the middle third, then the false 9 will usually hover from side to side and create overloads in certain areas of the pitch. And when moving into the final third, the false 9 will hover around the box, looking to drag centre-backs out of position and free up space for the runners either side. Or if the ball is out wide, then it can still be used as a more traditional centre forward and attempt to get to the end of any cross. By no means an innovative tactic, the false 9 was first seen as early as the 1930s with the Austrian Bundesliga. Head coach Hpkool Z opted for the use of a playmaking forward Matthias Sindelar in the number 9 position, and acted as the focal point of their 2-3-5 formation. And throughout history, it's been used countless times for some fantastic things. Peter Guti in the 1950s, Johan Cruyff in the 70s, Totti in the early 2000s, and arguably the best ball-player in recent history was Lionel Messi under Pep Guardiola. Let's use Lionel Messi under Pep Guardiola as an example of how effective the false 9 can be going forward. Barcelona's front three in 2009 was composed of Thierry Henry, Lionel Messi and Samuel Eto'o. All three are some of the best players in the history of football. But what's interesting here is how Henry and Eto'o would line up as wide forwards in Guardiola's 4-3-3. On paper, it seems counterintuitive to have the two best centre forwards as wingers. But with Messi dropping deep, it allowed Henry and Eto'o to move into more central positions, accomplishing many things at once. Firstly, with Messi in the centre, he would be at the tip of a midfield diamond, outnumbering an opposition's three midfielders and helping the team circulate possession. Secondly, it would force one of the centre-backs to move out of position and would open up the space behind the back line. Or if the opposition shuffled their defence effectively, it would leave large gaps on the wing for the fullbacks to move into and provide crosses to the forwards. So although a 4-3-3 on paper, the formation was arguably more of a 4-4-2 diamond, with Messi at the tip of this diamond. Now in 2011, Guardiola once again dominated world football with Messi as a false nine. But this time the two wide forwards didn't move into the box as often as Henry and Eto'o. Instead, the wingers in Pedro and Villa would maintain their width, completely deserting the centre of the pitch, leaving the two centre-backs with no one to mark. By slowly moving up the pitch, Barcelona would end up having 5 players on the offensive line, with an extremely dynamic front three who would constantly move and shift their positioning, making it difficult for the opposition to man mark, something that was highly evident in their 3-1 win over Man United in the Champions League final.
You can transform your videos from looking like an 80s home video to a modern day.
There is one famous English saying which says, "Be yourself, everyone else is taken." Let me explain it today so that you understand it clearly in full detail. The point is, even the most successful person of today, even Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg or any successful person, if even one he want, he cannot make his own son or daughter the next successful person. So the point is, we can learn to be humble, we can learn to work hard, but at the end of the day you have to be original. You have to follow your own path. There's no space of next Facebook, next Amazon. Next company has to be different, next person has to be different. So be yourself. End of the day, today I will share with you summary and key essence of the book Side Hustle. Well, side hustle is for those people who are doing a job, who are not happy with their job and want to have a side income, want to have a passive income. So the book is all about having a job, creating an income source, creating a passive income source while staying in your job. So the side hustle is all about the steps which you need to do your business about increasing your income. So there are different steps given in the books. I will share in summarized way all the steps. So the first thing is that you're gonna think today that what kind of things you have around you, what kind of ideas, what kind of businesses you can start which can help you in earning a new thing. This is the first step. And the other step is brainstorming with the people around you, with your support you. 5 to 10 ideas, and then you can think new and is that you have less time compared to the others. So what are the opportunities, students? What is the threat idea? Maybe you are doctor and you are thinking to teach something in parallel and earn money from that. I'm just telling you that you have to make ideas in this way, and then you need to do the SWOT analysis of every idea. Do best, and what is the thing which can give you money easily. And the fifth will be about the money, what kind of investment you need on it. That you are going to decide something. You have to start a thing which is close to your passion, which is about a problem which maybe people around you are facing. You might be thinking that I can earn the money from this easily. So what you can do, you can start a side hustle. So from the book you can start teaching on, you can teach.
Is the Canada PR on your wish list? Canada is looking forward.
What do you do for a living? I'm not talking about your job title or your daily tasks. I'm talking about what you actually do, what you actually create, what you improve, what you contribute. For some of you watching, this question might be pretty easy to answer. But for those of you who find yourself working as a middle manager, overseeing a human resources team at an insurance underwriting company, well, it might be a little harder. In the last century, service jobs have gone from representing less than a quarter of all jobs to now representing nearly 80% of workers. Now, when we think of service jobs, we think of people serving us coffee, finding us a pair of pants out of the back, or carrying our bags to the hotel room. Sure, they might be an unnecessary luxury for the people using these services, but it's still pretty easy to see that they do produce value, be it in the form of a nice cup of coffee, a fresh new outfit, or promptly delivered luggage, without the need of a physio appointment the next day. But you see, the thing is, the service sector is far more broad than the name implies. It encompasses everybody from call center salespeople to CEOs. In fact, it's quite difficult these days to find a job outside the service sector, specifically because those roles require special certifications. Remember that for later because it's important. But the growth of the self-serving service sector and the subsequent rise in bullshit jobs that came with it seems a bit odd. Surely, the efficient free market would weed out these individuals that are contributing nothing, punishing the companies that bear their salary expenses while rewarding the more efficient organizations that do without them, right? Well, no. And to understand why, it's time to learn how money works in the modern day to perpetuate the existence of people who work to nothing but justify their own existence. And before we get into this quirk of modern advanced capitalism, we need to first look at Soviet communism. The Soviet Union was built on the idea of noble labor. The state said that work was honorable and dignified. The word Soviet loosely translates to a workers' council, and people took pride in their labor above all else. This caused problems when there wasn't enough work to go around amongst everybody. The drive for full employment meant that some people were given tasks that were obviously totally redundant. Factory managers hired as many people as they possibly could, because it was honorable to oversee the labor of so many of your comrades. They also feared that if they didn't give people jobs now, they wouldn't be able to get the people they did need in the future. This worker hoarding, as it became known, meant that some people were given jobs like counting endless inventories of nuts and bolts. Now, obviously, there are huge differences between the modern Western world and 1950s Russia, but there are also some concerning similarities. The theory of totally unnecessary jobs really started to gain traction after the anthropologist David Graeber published a book on bullshit jobs, in which he outlined 5 broad categories of jobs that had become more and more common. The first are what he called the flunkies. Think people like doormen, receptionists, chauffeurs, and assistants. These people exist to make other people feel better about themselves and could easily be replaced with some kind of technology. That's if they are really needed at all. Then there are the duct tapers. These are the people who work to alleviate problems that could very easily be fixed permanently. Think someone like an inventory manager that just so happens to have the system permissions to update stock levels in a warehouse, where that could have been done automatically or at the very least shared amongst floor staff. In his book, Graeber talks of a duct taper whose entire job was fixing the mistakes made by an apparently brilliant statistician. In reality, this star employee was actually hopeless, and the duct taper had to fight with bureaucracy to get his mistakes fixed before they could do any damage. This example shows that the solution solution to the problem is not always getting rid of the person in the bullshit job, because the duct taper themselves was probably contributing some value, but would be able to create value much more effectively had a needless obstacle been removed. The same cannot be said for the next bullshit job category on the bullshit jobs list, and that is the box tickers, the army of mindless drones that exist in big companies around the world because they make said companies appear legitimate to other big companies. Think of the people that create internal company newspapers with stories about key executives, or whatever it is that's reported on those things. I mean, nobody actually reads them, and that's the point. But if a company didn't have an internal newspaper, or a party planning committee, or a culture coordinator, then it might look like a small fry company not worth doing business with or working for. Now it's time to get to the real demons of the bullshit job world. The goons. Goons are an affectionate name to a class of jobs that actually has a negative impact on society, but make themselves necessary by simply existing. The classic example of this is in-house corporate lawyers. They don't really produce anything, but if you don't have them, then it will end up costing you more to hire external counsel to fight off lawsuits from companies that do have internal corporate lawyers. Perhaps the best example of this are patent trolls, which are basically companies that will buy up other companies with lots of generic patents, and then try to sue other companies in the hope that they will just agree to settle out in court. Even the largest companies in the world are guilty of perpetuating this negative-sum game. Apple famously sued Samsung for a patent over a rectangular phone with rounded corners. Now just ask yourself, despite what you might think about patents and intellectual property, what value was being created by the thousands of people whose full-time job it was to enforce that ruling? Beyond just the lawyers, there are people like the lobbyists who fight to simply change the rules of the game around, and salespeople who exist purely to move business dealings from one company to another while being the definition of a middleman in the process. Now, you might think that the goons are bad, but they have nothing on the worst amongst the bunch of pointless workers. The taskmasters. These are the people assigned to watch over and manage people that really don't need to be watched over or managed. Effective management does exist, especially when it's coordinating a team with a wide set of skills. But someone like a sales manager who lords over a team of people with exact...
Hi. Wait, before you skip this ad, give me just 1 minute.
You will often hear it said that Brazilians have also won just one of their last 3 league games, losing away at Rennes, requiring an 8 if you are familiar with that series, but rather taking over a star-studded but faltering AC Milan side, where he won 8 trophies in 4 years, including the European Cup twice. However, whilst Saki was able to implement his ideas at the San Siro, just with superior players to the ones that he had had at previous clubs, that isn't really an option for Pochettino. PSG have at least a handful of players, and particularly forward players, who by virtue of optics and economics have to start virtually every game. So far this season, Maurizio Pochettino. That would be named. Not exactly megastar.
Let's do the chicken show ons. Let's do the digit. Let's do the chicken show ons.
मैं भी डिजिट पे स्विच कर रहा हूँ. क्या आप करोगे?
Games just aren't that fun anymore, guys. I'm gonna be honest. I mean, I used to have so much fun in the past, you know? But now I just can't find anything to play, really. I think I'm just gonna get off for the night, guys. If you're on the gaming side of social media, you've probably heard people, or even yourself, say stuff like this before. People complaining about how there's nothing to play anymore, how much fun they used to have when they were kids, or even up to just a few weeks ago, and now games just don't hit like they used to. This statement always confused me, because from my perspective, there's plenty of games that I want to play right now, but just don't have the time for, and even more that I'm looking forward to releasing within the next few months. Until I watched a video by Optimus, a pretty large commentary channel, that made a video titled "Gaming Just Isn't the Same Anymore." And it gave me an entirely different perspective on why people are finding games dull, and helped me understand their point of view. However, I felt like there were flaws in his argument, and would personally disagree that games are just boring now. And before I continue, I want to make it clear that I'm not bashing on Optimus. I actually like the video and agree with most of the points he made. And if you like COD, Valorant, or Madden, that's cool. This video isn't a bash on you. I'm glad you're enjoying those games. That's not what this is about. So a big thing Optimus touched on in his video was how he used to love older games, and throughout the entire video, he mainly referred to big budget shooter games, saying that how he was getting bored of COD, and the only game he actually mentioned he was looking forward to was the new Battlefield. And it's not only Optimus who I've noticed this with, but it's hundreds of people online who say the same things, but only play this one genre. And maybe it's not even the genre you're tired of, but games feeling unfinished, DLC taking priority, the toxic environment of competitive, or thinking the quality of these big budget titles have simply lowered. So many people are tunnel visioned into only playing these big budget AAA games put out by these huge companies. And not only AAA games, but oftentimes the shooters within these AAA games. And it's no wonder why people are starting to feel jaded. Other than a few, most of these games play out exactly the same. You roll around, pew pew, shoot the enemy, one wins, one loses. And yeah, I know I'm boiling this down to the most basic rendition of an explanation, but when every game someone plays revolves around this premise, it's gonna get stale, especially when the game itself doesn't evolve. Optimus mentioned how this was the first year that he didn't check out the new COD game, and honestly, I'm surprised he's been playing this long. AAA games take a lot to make, so it leads them to take a lot less risks than, say, an indie developer would. So while COD has minor changes with each generation of games, the core mechanics stay the same, creating an overall lower skill ceiling. There's a big reason why a game like Super Smash Bros. Melee still has a thriving community. It's because even though the game came out in 2001, people are still finding new tech, and are constantly improving at the game, keeping things fresh with every single tournament. And I'm not saying COD or other shooters don't take skill, but at a certain point, you're gonna hit a skill ceiling, and it's at that point that the game starts getting stale. Even when people try to switch games, they're tunnel visioned into only looking at a specific group of games, big name titles that are extremely popular multiplayer games. But other than a few outliers, when people try to switch to one of these games, they're essentially getting a very similar experience to what they've been playing for more than an entire decade. Sure, game mechanics definitely vary between games, but the core of the game stays consistent, making the overall feel very similar. And couple this with the fact that we've been in quarantine for the past 1.5 years, where man's really just been playing games. Like when I was a kid, I was only allowed to play on weekends. And I hated that rule, but it made it so that games felt special. I would look forward to getting on my favorite games every weekend. So grinding games every day for that long, of course it's gonna get boring. Especially games that get repetitive or feel like you can't break a skill ceiling in. Another thing I frequently see is how people say how games used to be so much better. Optimus even stated himself how much fun he used to have with older games like Zelda Wind Waker, Mario Sunshine, and Pokemon. But what confuses me is how these same game franchises are still being put out, and personally I say that they're even better than before. I don't know if it's because people have the pre-notioned idea that Nintendo only makes kids games, but once again, I'm seeing the same trend of people not venturing outside of their mainstream games. I mean, just based off the games Optimus mentioned, Breath of the Wild is the best open world I've ever played. Breath of the Wild 2 is on its way out. Mario Odyssey is on the same level, if not even better than Mario Sunshine. Bowser's Fury is relatively recent, and while Pokemon's been shaky, the trailers for the new games have got me cautiously excited for my favorite franchise again. Which leads me to the main point of this video, or sort of my extremely simple solution.
Games still fun. I don't mean that in the sense of like, is GTA 5 a fun game? It objectively is. Going in as Trevor, going on a rampage still gives me a small rush of serotonin. But now the game's been out for 7 years, and a rampage just isn't as fun as it used to be, and I Alt F4 and go back to do something else. That's where I think the main problem is. Not as fun as it used to be. One of my best friends told me on Discord the other day he was taking a break from Discord and his PC as he found it boring and wouldn't be online as much. At first I was wondering what he meant. Then I started to think about what he said, and I ended up agreeing. Let me give you an idea of what he meant. How often have you finished school or work and you go and sit by your PC or console and were so ready to have some fun, and then you just sit there for hours waiting for something to happen? You have games to play, and they're good games. They're just not fun anymore. I sit here most days looking at my desktop with hundreds of games on it, and I spend most of my time just on Chrome, watching Netflix or YouTube. And I don't know why. I want to play these games, and sometimes I even open them, but I never make it further than an hour before I get bored and go back to endlessly scrolling on TikTok. So, I've been rambling about things not being fun. So, what is fun? Fun is a very subjective term. Ask 50 people what they find fun, and you'll get 50 different answers. One may say roller coasters. Another may say getting pegged in the arse. It's very subjective, but I'll throw my 2 cents in, because this is my YouTube channel, and my opinion is the only opinion that truly matters around here. Something is fun when you want to relive the moment again. This can be in the form of nostalgia, or just going to bed with a grin on your face. I remember a few years ago when me and my friends would spend hours playing Team Fortress 2, but not the actual game. We played the man versus machine mode. I used to play it on a MacBook, and we could only play one map because that was the only one that would load on Apple products. It got so bad one night that we played it all night until the sun came up the next day. My dad was furious, but I didn't. I had fun. Pure, childlike, I wish I could live that night again, because that night was nice. I don't really care about it. Nostalgia is such a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it reminds you of good times in the past that you look back on fondly. But on the other hand, it reminds you of good times in the past, and it makes you sad, because you can't have those times again. Not saying that there can't be any good times in games nowadays. Me and my friends discovered a game called Forest, and the whimsy came back. We had the biggest smiles for players, building huge cities, fighting off gruesome cannibals, and just generally being idiots. If you want a game to play with your friends, I highly suggest it. It's the most fun I've had with my friends in a long time. But it's still got stale, and now we almost never touch the game, except from when we all say we should play it again, seriously high level, beating all enemy Pokemon in one hit. But none of them can do that. There's an older, wiser person. Thing to say, but it is true. I'm not who I was when I was 12 playing TF2 till sunrise. I'm a much older, wiser person. We can't bring back those fun memories because we aren't the same people. It would be lying to say that I'm happier now than I was when I was a kid, playing.
I've been playing video games ever since I was 3 years old. Perceiving the decline, is it in our heads? It's challenging and overwhelming to tackle the core issues that plague a multi-billion-dollar industry. With so many different companies, developers, publishers, programmers spread all over the world, is it possible to categorize and identify this decline? Yes! All we need to do is follow the money. So let me just list some things you probably noticed and we'll elaborate on them down the line. 1. An increase in buggy, glitchy games. Big budget releases often have a botched launch and are forced to rely on updates to fix their issues. Number 2. An overabundance of remakes, remasters, and sequels. Number 3. The corporatization of gaming. The conduct of major companies, publishers, and developers. And of course, number 4. the obvious influx of RNG loot boxes being forced into every genre of game, and increasingly aggressive monetization schemes. It could be that our own minds play a factor in this as well. Possibly we see the game industry as being worse because we had it so good in the past. Is all the disappointment we have caused simply by us growing older and more jaded? It's entirely possible the negativity we associate with modern gaming is outweighing the more positive innovations that have been made. Games look better, the stories more epic, characters are represented so realistically, animation vastly improved. My point is, try not to become too overwhelmed with nostalgia for the glory days. And remember that your perception plays a huge part in this decline. What do and don't you have a problem with? That's for you to figure out. But now that we've got a solid base for this topic, let's dive deep into the decline of gaming. Complacency. Pleased, especially with oneself or one's merits, advantages, situation, often without awareness of some potential danger or defect, self-satisfied. Complacency is probably the biggest deterrent to innovation and quality game design. The perfect example is Valve. Once known for their unconventional methods of game design and their repertoire of critically acclaimed releases, so many instant classics that to this day are viewed as some of the greatest games of all time. But what about since then?
Looks like there's been a change of plans.
Well, Valve has not made a new game since Portal 2, 8 years ago. And the last time they even launched a new IP was Left 4 Dead. That was 11 years ago. But let's take a quick look at the games they've launched since then. CSGO, a remake of Counter-Strike Source, which was a remake of the original Counter-Strike. Dota 2, a remake of the Dota mod for Warcraft 3. Counter-Strike Online 2, Koreans only. Counter-Strike Nexon Zombies, free-to-play zombie shooter, no thanks. Left 4 Dead Survivors, Japanese only. The Lab, a series of 8 VR minigames that was more or less just an experiment. Dota Underlords, a mobile version of Dota Auto Chess. Do I need to elaborate? This is the same company that made Half-Life 2, and yet Valve is just content with developing these unremarkable titles? You can really sum up the disappointment gamers have had with this company in the Artifact reveal. Everyone was so hyped to see what Valve was working on. It had been so many years since they came out with a new kick-ass game, and when they revealed it, everyone lost all interest. A Dota 2 card game. Now the question is, why did Valve stop making actual games? What happened to their ambition? Well, as of March 2015, Valve makes $18 million per month off Dota 2 alone. Valve is also, by ratio, one of the most profitable companies with the fewest employees in America, earning roughly $300,000 per employee. They make 30% of every sale off Steam. They're just rolling in the moolah right now. The chimichangas, the gold bars. If you're making tons of money selling the same thing for 7 years and you're a businessman, well, why would you stop? Why would you take the risk and time to develop and sell a brand new product when you can simply maintain your current products and watch the profits get dumped straight into your bank account? Oh hey Bethesda, how's it going, buddy? Didn't see you there. You still selling Skyrim? There's no question that Valve fans will eat up whatever new game they put out, provided it's the type of game people want. As a consumer, you'd buy Portal 3, you'd buy Left 4 Dead 3, and you'd most certainly buy Half-Life 3. Long awaited and pretty much dead, Half-Life 3 is a perfect example of complacency.
I got nothing to say about Half-Life.
Despite the critical acclaim and unrelenting hype for this title, you'd think Half-Life 3 would be at the top of Valve's priority list. But it never was. Instead, we're getting a VR game. And while it's cool they're finally making another Half-Life, all I can think is, what about the games that people want? You see, Valve and even some other companies need to take lessons from Bono. You know, don't ever stop trying to be in the limelight, keep pushing forward to infinity and beyond. Bethesda and Rockstar are another two clear-cut examples of how complacency has creeped into the video game industry. The undisputed masters of reselling the same product in as many forms possible. After Grand Theft Auto 5, Rockstar basically did nothing except update the game and port their old games to different platforms. Until 5 years later, they released Red Dead Redemption 2. Now again, I'm not saying these are bad games, but if you look back in the 5 years from 2001 to 2006, they were putting out hot shit like GTA 3, Vice City, Midnight Club 2, Manhunt, Red Dead Revolver, The Warriors, and Bully. Rockstar used to experiment and try new things, developing several IPs at a time and building a library of games to their name. But now they've gotten complacent. Bethesda, meanwhile, had a 5-year wait between Oblivion and Skyrim. That felt like forever, but oh my god, it was worth it. Skyrim was amazing. It flew out of 5. Rockstar basically did nothing except update the game and port their old games to different platforms. Until 5 years later, they released Red Dead Redemption 2. Now again, I'm not saying these are bad games, but if you look back in the 5 years from 2001 to 2006, they were putting out hot shit like GTA 3, Vice City, Midnight Club 2, Manhunt, Red Dead Revolver, The Warriors, and Bully. Rockstar used to experiment and try new things, developing several IPs at a time and building a library of games to their name. But now they've gotten complacent. Bethesda, meanwhile, had a 5-year wait between Oblivion and Skyrim. That felt like forever, but oh my god, it was worth it. Skyrim was amazing. It flew off the shelves like crazy. All my friends were playing it, and now it's been 8 years since Skyrim, and we basically have no news, gameplay, or anything regarding Elder Scrolls 6. After New Vegas, it took Bethesda 5 years to come out with Fallout 4, a product that was very polarizing amongst the Fallout fan base, and then 76 releases. Do you see this decline? It's this complacency, this lack of desire to innovate and create new things, that has led to some of our favorite game companies releasing new games far more infrequently. And when they do, it's either something you don't care about or it's just another sequel. Despite nearly every single game company falling prey to complacency, almost none of this applies to Nintendo, who have stuck to their roots and continue to evolve and release new games that blow us away. Nintendo is still doing things the old-fashioned way and making a shit ton of money, while these other game companies are doing things the easy way. Because if it's broken but makes a shitload of money, why fix it? The abundance of remakes and remasters. It's a fact that gaming has followed certain trends throughout the years. You had arcades where you paid quarters for entertainment. In the NES days, it was all about side-scrolling platformers. The SNES and Sega Genesis were all about graphics. Eventually, we had online gaming, rhythm games, battle royale. So many trends have come and gone. Some have stayed, but occasionally a certain style of game is perceived as no longer profitable or appealing to the mainstream. 3D platformers, for instance, have long fallen out of favor outside of Mario. In this case, instead of developing a brand new game in a genre that's considered dead, companies would choose to remaster or remake their old ones. With that, they become hella popular. Who would have thought? Spyro Reignited and Insane Trilogy were incredible remasters. And since those were so successful, don't you think people would be even more happy to see a brand new game starring the Purple Dragon or Lovable Bandicoot? But there's been no such announcement, aside from a remaster of Crash Team Racing. You can do pretty incredible things with a remake. Sometimes it turns an outdated game into something completely new, effectively remaking it to be as good as you thought it was back then. Remakes are a great way for new gamers to experience the magic of the past without the daunting task of playing something that looks like this. Or it can be a method for the developers to add onto their old project and give it some new bells and whistles. A remaster is capable of bringing old games up to speed with several quality-of-life changes and making it the definitive way to experience an old title. It can be pretty awesome when they port something to a newer console so that you don't have to buy an old expensive copy of it, like Symphony of the Night and other Castlevania games being ported to Xbox. That shit's cool. The problem arises when companies become more content to resell you their old games than they are to make new ones. It's become a meme. How many different versions of Skyrim Bethesda has churned out? Legendary Edition, Skyrim Special Edition, Remastered, Skyrim on Switch, Skyrim now with mods, Skyrim for VR. In April 2013, Bethesda announced via their blog that they were moving on from Skyrim and preparing to work on other projects. Yeah, that's a fucking laugh. Skyrim Pinball Edition. At moments, some remasters just bank off your nostalgia and try to parade their old game as something new by slapping an HD at the end of the title. All I'm saying is, there weren't a whole lot of remakes or remasters back on the N64, PlayStation, Xbox, PS2, or GameCube. And that's because they were focused on creating new games. In fact, I can only think of one remaster from those consoles, Conquer Live and Reloaded, which made the game look so freaking sexy. The visuals are still impressive to this day, and they even launched a brand new multiplayer mode that was just awesome. But nowadays, some remasters, Skyrim on Switch, Skyrim now with mods, Skyrim for VR. In April 2013, Bethesda announced via their blog that they were moving on from Skyrim and preparing to work on other projects. Yeah, that's a fucking laugh. Skyrim Pinball Edition. At moments, some remasters just bank off your nostalgia and try to parade their old game as something new by slapping an HD at the end of the title. All I'm saying is, there weren't a whole lot of remakes or remasters back on the N64, PlayStation, Xbox, PS2, or GameCube. And that's because they were focused on creating new games. In fact, I can only think of one remaster from those consoles, Conquer Live and Reloaded, which made the game look so freaking sexy. The visuals are still impressive to this day, and they even launched a brand new multiplayer mode that was just awesome. But nowadays, some remasters are just a shameless cash grab, where you can see a side-by-side comparison and notice no difference. But hey, at least they added some extra dirt on the glass for BioShock Remastered. Take my $40. Remember the original port of Dark Souls on Steam? Yeah, it was so fucking lazy and busted they didn't even swap out the button prompts from the Xbox 360 version. I mean, holy shit. And then From Software comes out with Dark Souls Remastered, an actual real port of the game. And they charge people $40 to play Dark Souls with a revitalized PvP community. And even DS Remastered didn't bother to fix several game-breaking glitches highlighted in this wonderful Inferno Plus video. Companies will also take it a step further. EA turned Dungeon Keeper into a blatant pay-to-win dumpster fire mobile game. Activision not only released Modern Warfare Remastered bundled with Infinite Warfare, but later added loot boxes and paid weapons into a game that didn't have those things in 2007. Some games like Sleeping Dogs, Last of Us will come out with a remaster 1 or 2 years after it released. Shit. And then From Software comes out with Dark Souls Remastered. But is all that really worth buying?
Exactly the same job title is a little bit different. At best, they are going to be an overpaid cheerleader encouraging people to work harder in roles that may themselves be bullshit. At worst, they will be distractions desperate to justify their existence by calling meetings and creating strategic mission statements that achieve nothing but pulling people away from a job where they do actually have a chance of doing something meaningful. These roles are not singular prescriptions. In fact, some specifically useless employees may find their role is a combination of all 5 of these factors. Many middle managers exist to oversee fundamentally useless departments and only have a job because a highly layered corporate hierarchy makes the bigwigs at the top of the food chain feel good about themselves. But this doesn't answer the question. How did we get here? The Soviet Union created bullshit jobs because it was obsessed with having a job for everybody, and the nation took pride in labor. But our capitalist systems are supposed to be better than that.
And bookkeeping infrastructure of their business, but we're going to go over at a high level some of the things that you can make sure you're doing to be compliant. So with that said, let's jump into the content. So, thank you for this nice picture of me here, Danny. My background is in finance.
Right? Well, sort of. But we are still victims of the same bureaucracy. Sure, companies would do well for themselves by cutting down these tasks, but sometimes these incentives can be misaligned with the actual decision makers. In the same way a Soviet factory worker might hoard staff to make themselves seem important, modern middle managers will do the same. In the same way factory walls were covered in propaganda about the brilliance of Soviet laborers, LinkedIn pages are covered in self-serving propaganda about how much an honor it was for some analysts to spearhead the joint development project for streamlining customer satisfaction in the bullshit corporation multi-platform digital sales ecosystem. In the same way that the Soviet Union was obsessed with everybody having work to do, even if it meant making up meaningless jobs, modern workplaces are obsessed with everybody working their 40-hour weeks, even if it means, well, making up meaningless tasks. This is before we consider the bureaucracy. Let's get one thing out of the way. Countries like the USA are not home to the totally free markets. There are laws and regulations about how to do pretty much everything. Want to build a factory? Well, you better make sure it's in a location zoned for heavy industry. And you better do an appropriate tender for the contract to construct that factory and have appropriate insurance. And if you are shipping your products overseas, you need to make sure you pay the appropriate tariffs and excises. All of these steps involves larger institutions which will themselves harbor bullshit jobs. Now, this isn't to argue for big government or small government. Some policies really are important. And of course, some are bullshit. But companies have had a very important part to play in this whole system as well. The growth in lobbying has led to the creation of more and more legislation, which has made it such that starting and maintaining a successful business of any size is almost impossible without a team of accountants and lawyers who will help a business owner navigate this bureaucracy. You might say this is in the best interest of a large corporation, because it makes it harder for potential competitors to get off the ground, but we don't want to point fingers here. Anyway, is there a solution to this? As a society? Sure. Embrace the idea that it's okay to not work 40 hours a week. The idea that a job is either bullshit or not bullshit is not entirely correct. In reality, almost all jobs will have some level of bullshit built into daily routines. If it was acceptable to say, my work is done, I'm done for the day, then it would be a lot easier to see who is contributing nothing. As an individual? Not really. The truth is, if you do find yourself in a role with a lot of bullshit tasks, you might just have to suck it up in the short term. Maybe work on a side hustle free from bullshit in your off time. Or, embrace it. There are lots of people that are very proud of their superfluous yet important sounding titles. Maybe it makes the pointless meetings or irrelevant PowerPoints easy to get through now you know it's all bullshit. Of course, if you actually do want to truly immerse yourself in, bureaucracy, and you decide that one accounting job isn't good enough for you, then go watch our videos on EVE Online to find out how a video game has cultivated a financial system so complex it harbors its own bullshit jobs. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing to keep on learning how money works. Small fry company.
Alright, what's going on everybody? So this is a little bit, I guess, different of a video than I usually make here on the channel, but honestly, this is one that I just wanted to make, and it's kind of similar to a video, I guess, that I made about a year ago at this point. But I just kind of wanted to talk about the current, I guess, gaming scene / industry, talk about some of the things that I'm feeling when it comes down to video games, and just kind of see if I'm the only person feeling this way. Now, if you're not one of these people, if you're actually always enjoying new games and you're always finding new experiences to play, honestly, man, I'm happy for you because you are getting a lot more out of the gaming industry than I am at this point. You are having a much better time than me. And this video is not in any way meant to attack people like that. I feel like a lot of people misinterpret this argument as like oh, if you're enjoying any new video game, you're a moron, which no. You know, if you enjoy the new Call of Duty game, I can't hate on you. If you enjoy the new Madden, I can't hate on you. If you enjoyed Cyberpunk, I can't hate on you, you know? But I've been, unfortunately, dealing with this issue for a few years now, it seems like. And it's actually kind of depressing in a way, because video games have actually genuinely been such a massive part of my life. I started playing video games when I was around 3 years old. My dad introduced me to the world of gaming on the PlayStation 2 with Grand Theft Auto 3 and Madden 2003. I know Grand Theft Auto 3 for a 3-year-old child is like, for a lot of people that just seems criminal, but for the most part, I would just kind of like drive the cars around and like try to avoid hurting anybody, and I would like try to do taxi.
Frankie, let's start with you. There was not really much for, an hour in.
Or you're just as confused as I was when I was searching the internet wondering how do I find out what edition of a game that I own on Steam. Not version, but edition, like gold edition, ultimate edition, stuff like that. I'm going to help you with
why the motivation does not help. The motivation does not work. You see, I watched so many motivational videos. You talk about anybody, I would have watched their videos. But I realized one thing, this motivation is extrinsic. Until unless you have the passion coming out from inside, you will not be inspired. And you will always look for motivation, motivation, motivation. Motivation is good, but before motivation, what you need is clarity of who you are, what you're passionate about, how you can convert that passion into money. I have helped hundreds of people to find their passion, build their business, and make money. And today, they are living an amazing life, doing what they love.
You can now get a 30-day trial to experience
here if the fullback's overlapping or if Neymar's dropping off. He then sort of breaks into that slow saunter that Messi has, where he's then moving up into a more dangerous position here, still very slowly, still in that way that he does that doesn't attract attention, doesn't attract defenders, before bursting forwards up into the box. Now that's all well and good, except here you also have Marco Verratti, who wants to occupy a similar kind of space. Here you also have Angel Di Maria, who likes to drop off and play these long crossfield passes like this to switch with his left foot and move the ball round before he bursts up. So straight away you've got an issue that Messi, who is somebody who wants all the play to go through him a lot of the time, and is also somebody to whom his teammates will naturally look because he is this incredible footballer, is starting to occupy similar positions to where some of the other PSG players want to be. Another problem that you have is the kind of players that Neymar and Mbappe. So what Mbappe does is also drop off but let's say that's fine. Di Maria's holding the width. Mbappe wants to draw his centre-backs forwards by linking play up so that he can spin around and attack these sorts of corridors. So he's over here like this, and he's going to attack directly this way. Neymar, ideally, if he's playing a slightly wider position, which accommodates Messi in the 10 slot, he wants space to run at this player here because he wants to get he doesn't want this defender coming to the because he wants to get it inside this channel. Mbappe really, in this sort of setup, wants to be playing deeper here so that Messi has got this space here to attack, maybe by playing little 1-2s with Di Maria, so he will attack this space here, then move into here like this, and then he can look to release. But Mbappe's natural game is not to be the sort of player who pushes defenders back and back and back, because he needs to have room to accelerate into. Also, Mbappe likes to peel off into this slot. And this happened against Rennes a couple of times, where him and Neymar are effectively looking to occupy the same sort of position. Now that arose, or problems arose from that in one instance specifically because they were actually going for the same bouncing ball trying to shoot. But again, you have this kind of clustering of players here and here. Let's get rid of these arrows because we'll make it a little bit more clear. These players' natural attacking patterns suggest that they want to occupy similar sorts of areas. You know, Verratti likes to push forwards and orchestrate play from this area. It also allows him to press higher, defend more aggressively. But look, Messi's here too, Di Maria's here too. So unless these players are going to start doing things that are not naturally what they want to do, or play maybe with a little bit more discipline and stick in this spot here and stick us, we drop Di Maria to the bench, which feels kind of unfortunate, and bring in maybe more of a ball winner here like Herrera. Messi out here on this side, Verratti can kind of play on one side here like this. Then we have maybe a slightly more natural system. Messi's drifting into this space here where he operates well. Mbappe can drop off, but maybe a little bit to there. Neymar can look round, but the crucial guy here is Hakimi, because then what you can get is this more sort of natural 3-2-5 system. But if you're doing that, you're sacrificing either Angel Di Maria, who's really good and defensively more effective, which we'll come on to in a little bit, or you're sacrificing one of the three. And in that case, which one goes? Is it the blistering pace and close control and dribbling of Mbappe? Is it Neymar and his trickery and his eye for space? Or is it Messi, still arguably the world's greatest player? So that's the conundrum that Pochettino has to solve. The natural system for them here means that somebody misses out. Even though you do end up getting the best from Hakimi, and you probably end up getting a lot more from the others. So now let's have a quick look at defense. Okay, so now we're going to have a quick look at defence, and as I've said, PSG are conceding half a goal a game more with this front three on the pitch than they are without. There's a couple of obvious problems here. Firstly, the way PSG look to generally press is they'll move into sort of a 4-4-2 system like this. Now, Di Maria is really good at this. Messi is not. Messi strolls around, he wants to find space, he doesn't want to really actively engage in a counter press. What that does is if the first line of here is bypassed, that naturally sucks Di Maria in because Messi's not dropping back and counter pressing here at all. Verratti wants to push up, but he also knows that's going to isolate Gay on his own there, which is not ideal. So Verratti has to hang back a little bit. That automatically robs PSG of some of their aggression. What it also does, if Di Maria is sucked in here, and this fullback is pushing up aggressively, is it isolates Hakimi, or whoever the right back is, and creates an ocean of space in this particular part of the pitch here. Now this is something that Rennes exploited really, really well for their first goal. And it's basically down to the fact that Messi is not an energetic presser. Now it is worth noting that Neymar has actually really upped his work rate defensively of late, and has been quite impressive in that. Di Maria definitely is a dedicated and hard-working attacking midfielder. So they've got no real problems in this second line. It's when the first line is breached, that creates disruption in their overall defensive shape, and teams find it really easy to exploit that. There's another issue as well that Rennes exploited for their second goal. If the ball then ends up sort of in this kind of area with this player here, for example, what PSG are having to do is fall back quite deep in order to defend this area. And that makes sense. But if they fall back too deep, like this, all of a sudden you've got a massive space here, because what's not happening is your number 10 is not dropping off to start covering this sort of defensive area. So even if these guys are doing their job, as they generally speaking are, you're still leaving a gap front of the box, and what Rennes were able to do was get down here, pull the ball back like this, and find a shooting opportunity from the edge of the box from which they scored. So basically Messi's lack of energy and lack of pressing, which is not otherwise compensated for in quite the same way because PSG aren't always able to play such a high line. Verratti's position is slightly compromised because he's trying to be a defensive anchor and not press too high up. It's opening up space in other areas of the pitch, and this is causing PSG defensive problems. Now, obviously, go back to the point that I made at the beginning, these are three phenomenal footballers in the world's top 5, no question. And there is going to be a perception that they will click ultimately, particularly the relationship between Messi and Neymar will blossom. Mbappe will either feel his way through that or maybe feel a little bit excluded. That's something that'll play out from a kind of personality perspective. But Mauricio Pochettino has got a real job on his hands working out exactly how to balance the brilliance of this potential attacking lineup with the way that he does his system otherwise. Now that might seem that he goes back to like a more of a 4-3-3. You then lose maybe Angel Di Maria, but you have that greater degree of solidity in midfield, a little bit like Liverpool were doing a couple of seasons back. It may be that he rotates through the front three and sees things on a game-by-game basis, but the problem that he really faces is he needs to sort this out before PSG get through to the latter stages of the Champions League. And on a match-by-match basis, a lot of the teams in Ligue 1, even though Rennes beat them and Lyon looked good against them, a lot of the other teams are not necessarily going to give them the kind of tough tactical examination that those latter stages of the Champions League fixtures will do. And Pochettino needs to sort out how to get the best from Messi, Neymar and Mbappe before he gets to that stage. Or possibly he even risks not being able to get there at all. Thanks very much. This has been Tifo IRL. I'm Alex. If you like what we're doing here, then please do subscribe to the videos, check out all of the other tactical stuff we've done. JJ's done a great video on how Messi scored his first goal for PSG that looks at some of these things as well. So please go through what we've done previously and have a look, and I'll see you again soon.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic brings you the best sports journalism in the world in a personalised experience, connecting you with the stories and teams that you care about the most. There's coverage of 13 sports, plus direct access to world-class journalists through live Q&As, discussions and podcasts. Not to mention, it's all ad-free. And you can try it now for free for 30 days by clicking the link in the description.
If this ain't tempting enough, we bet 60% off on the Burger King app definitely is.
To people who say games are boring and are getting stale, instead of trying to gain enjoyment out of the same shooters and sports games that get recycled every year, just look at things outside the mainstream bubble. It doesn't matter if you have a certain console or a PC, there's plenty of games on everything, you just have to look. And if money is an issue, then don't worry, you aren't forced into only playing free-to-play games. $10, $15, $20, $15, $25. Not to mention older games go on sale really often too. You aren't forced into only playing free-to-play games. If you've been stuck playing the same types of games over and over, there's probably so much you've missed. So much good stuff out there. But don't just pick up a single-player game, not enjoy it, and then claim you don't like single-player games at all. Oftentimes, you just haven't found the game that hits home with you. I mean, it's not like I like every single game I play, even if it's highly acclaimed. And if you're just really not into single-player games, and you really tried but just think they're boring, and only like multiplayer, action, and PvP, like, I promise there's games out there that are extremely well made that I'm still playing right now that feel so different from what we're used to. Spellbreak, Bed Wars, and Smash are some of my favorites right now. Trust me, there's a plethora of games out there. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not saying that these mainstream games are all bad. That's not this video. And if you still enjoy them, then don't let me stop you. In fact, I'm glad you enjoy them. You're better off than most people out there. I used to love these mainstream FPS games when I was younger, but at some points things just got boring. I've been at the point where I was losing interest in games, and all I've really been playing at the time was Overwatch for months on end. Sometimes me and my friends would hop on Destiny or COD, but halfway through we just stopped playing and just talk because at that point, the games had gotten so repetitive that we got on to talk and not the games. And other than the occasional Pokemon game, it wasn't until I started to play other genres of games outside of shooters that I really started to take an interest in so much more that's out there, introducing me to an entirely new world of art.
Buying the exact same product again? My point is, a lot of companies aren't willing to take risks anymore. It's disheartening to remember a time when the original Xbox was a haven of original, awesome, exclusive titles, and now the Xbox One doesn't even seem to be competing. This trend of lazy remasters and remakes brings me to my next point.
Hey there, what if I told you that this is your chance to ace the skill of the future? Yes.
Chasing trends. Early access. Hey guys, please excuse the shitty quality of this section. My video is still in early access, and you can donate to my Patreon to help fund my willingness to sit at a computer and edit. In an effort to capitalize on whatever is, and then Titanfall made advanced moves and save your ass as a developer with this luxury of post-launch support. Overwatch is a prime example of when it's utilized well. It needed several updates to become what it is today. Without them, most people would have gotten bored of the game. The idea of constantly adding new content and features to engage players and keep them coming back is good for both the gamers and the companies. However, it's when the games as a service philosophy starts enveloping every stage of design, when developers rely too much on fixing the game and adding to it after launch, that we see gaming decline. Halo 5 Guardians straight out the gate had like a absolute masterpiece. Diablo 3 is coming out, people have been waiting over. They aren't thinking, how can we make the best game possible? How can we make our fans happy? They're thinking, how can we make the most money with the least amount of effort? There are investors to please, deadlines to meet. Game development used to be just a bunch of nerds pooling talents and creativity to make something incredible, something they would want to play. Corporatization has been sucking the life and soul out of gaming, and this is illustrated by a complete lack of originality in the cover art of games. Check out this video by Nakey Jakey, it's really good. But it showcases a greater point, the lack of soul. It'd be foolish to condemn all pre-order bonuses, microtransactions, DLC, etc., because only a Sith deals in absolutes. But you're the consumer. What do you want? Do you want cool, meaningful, cosmetic unlockables that showcase your accomplishments? Okay, what's the ideal way for the player to unlock them? Ask yourself this question first. Is this good for the player? Is it good for the player to unlock gameplay-altering abilities or cosmetic items in monetized, randomized loot boxes? Is that a form of progression and unlocks that is beneficial to the player? Of course not. So why did companies include the well-being of the consumer and the quality of the experience is secondary to what's most profitable? Back during the 360 PS3, there was a lot more downloadable content than the previous generation. In fact, the GameCube didn't even connect to the internet. But now it seems like loot boxes are far more numerous. That's because companies realized DLC was only a one-time purchase. But there was a way to turn players into payers. Consistently doing that would yield high results. You got all those season passes where companies want you to put up $50 based on a promise. As video games become more and more expensive to make, the price of a new release has stayed the same for decades. And while any business big or small needs to make a profit, the lengths some companies go to monetize their games is absurd. Sometimes being so greedy to the point where they will compromise the design of their game. 343 and Creative Assembly went so far in this direction, crafting a mode specifically to integrate loot boxes into Halo Wars 2 and create a pay-to-win model. Madden and FIFA Ultimate Teams. Wow, those are so cool, ruined by pay-to-win loot boxes. Battlefield 1 and 4 offering literal shortcuts through the progression system. Think about that for a second. The designers created the system of XP, how it is earned, how much it takes to unlock things, and then decided to monetize a way for players to skip it entirely. Bungie literally cutting and reselling parts of Destiny 1 and 2 as DLC, making shaders consumable so players will have to buy them again. It was not a decision made for the benefit of the player. Forza 5 offering just as many payable cars as ones you earn in-game. The list of DLC for The Sims alone is fucking staggering. Middle-earth Shadow of War, a single-player game, chose the loot box method of delivering rewards to players. Dead Space 3 interrupting the game to ask you to buy more parts. Train Simulator 2015 offering over $4,000 of DLC. Purchasable weapons in Black Ops 4 giving people an advantage. Microsoft charging you to remove ads on Solitaire. Fucking microtransactions in Solitaire. Then for some games, it can get...
Complete them at all. So
hey there, what if I told you that this is your chance to ace the skill of the future? Yes, with 58 million new jobs by 2022, your future could be in AI. That's
how I got introduced into video games. They're expanding Nintendo GameCube. The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker is still one of my favorite video games of all time. Namco Museum opened me up to a lot of classic video games. I played so many different types of video games growing up that I just absolutely adored. And even today, like when I go back and play them, I'm just in love with these games, man. They're just awesome. But unfortunately, I've been feeling that like recently, new games just don't hit the same. It's been years since a video game has actually kind of caught my attention in the same way that a lot of games did, I guess, for, you know, well over a decade. I mean, I've played video games basically my entire life. I mean, if it wasn't for video games, I wouldn't even have a career on YouTube. I started out doing gameplay commentaries, giving my opinions on video games. I mean, I was a child in middle school recording Modern Warfare 3 commentaries with an iPod Touch set up on some books that I stacked in front of a 26-inch flat screen in the corner of my bedroom. That's how I got my start, you know, that's how my entire career that has changed my life all those years ago. And it seems like back then I just had so many different games to play. You know, Call of Duty games actually they were really good. There was Grand Theft Auto 4, NBA 2K. Those games were still good, man. Sports games actually still got something out of me. I still had my PSP, and it still functioned. I still have my PSP, but I don't have a charger. But I had all these different games to play, and back then, you know, it feels like that you're gonna have, you know, video games to play forever, right? And like I would always look forward to video games in the future, like what kind of awesome games are gonna come out now. And unfortunately, I just feel like that hasn't been the case at all. I feel like I've been really let down. The games of my childhood feel infinitely better. I feel like as time goes on, you know, the mission of the gaming industry has kind of changed, and in turn, the mission of a lot of video games has changed. I mean, when I was a kid, who released a video game, people would not fucking buy it. That just was how it was. If a game studio came out and they released a shitty video game that absolutely sucked, it was unplayable, it was broken from launch, that's how the game was. You know, like, you didn't get a chance to fix that. You didn't have day one patches and constant, you know, content updates, which, don't get me wrong, those are really actually good things, but not having those things to rely on kind of made game studios actually try. You know, they had to put out a good product and make it right the first time, or else the game fucking flopped. There was no chance for it to come back. You couldn't just knock it down to $9.99 on the PlayStation Store when the new update came out and hope to pull in some buys. You know, that just wasn't how it was. You released that shit on disc, it was like that. And so games were really good right off the jump. You know, I even find myself going back and playing these games. And this is what's crazy. I've been playing recently, like, I've been really into, like, Grand Theft Auto 5 again, which, you know, isn't super old in the grand scheme of things, but goddamn, that game is approaching 8 years old. And the funny thing is, I remember when that game came out, the exact day that I pre-ordered it and the day that it came out. I remember when Grand Theft Auto 5 was, you know, not even an available video game. I remember the day before, actually, I was playing, you know, the online mode of Grand Theft Auto 4's DLC, The Battle of Gay Tony, and I'm just sitting here thinking, like, man, this is really going to be one of the last times that I play this, because Grand Theft Auto 5 comes out tomorrow. And it was a school day. I was in middle school, okay, so I had to sit all the way through school that whole day, knowing that when I got home, my mom already had went and picked up my copy from GameStop that I pre-ordered. And when I came home, man, like, my mind was fucking blown by this game. Like, when I started up GTA 5 on the PS3 for the first time and I played through those first few missions, like, my mind was absolutely blown. Like, I remember going outside that day and, like, talking to my friends in the neighborhood on our bikes, and they're all just like, oh, bro, how's GTA 5? Because no one else in the neighborhood had this shit. And I'm just sitting here like, dude, it's incredible. Like, you guys have never experienced a game like this. And, like, they were all so pissed because their parents wouldn't let them come to my house to play it that day because, well, it was Grand Theft Auto, and a lot of parents don't let their kids play that kind of shit. But, like, dude, it was like an insane feeling, and I've never had a video game feel that way for me ever again, and it's kind of unfortunate, man. I think that there's a couple different reasons why that is the case. But like I said, I've found myself relying on the same games, it feels like, for years now to keep me entertained, in fact. I play Grand Theft Auto 5 like it's going out of fucking style, man. I mean, I've probably beaten that game 6 times over. I've probably sunk in. Shit, at this point, it's probably gotten into the thousands of hours total on Grand Theft Auto 5. I've played so much Minecraft that, you know, I can probably hum the entire soundtrack to that game verbatim without missing a fucking note. Every sound effect in that game, I know. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just so many old games, right, from my childhood, you know, Grand Theft Auto 5, Minecraft, the old sports games. Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario 64, Super Mario Galaxy, the Halo series, right? All the old good Call of Duty games. And there's so many more, man, like the Guitar Hero games are so unbelievable. There's just so many games out there that, like, as a kid, when you're playing them, man, like, the memories, like, of course you make them, but you don't realize. And you get to this point that in, like, 3 or 4 years when the game's not, you know, really popular anymore or anything, you're just sitting there thinking, like, damn, I really wish that in the moment I appreciated playing that game in its peak way more. Like, in the video here, you're watching Black Ops 2 campaign. Being a kid playing Black Ops 2, man, like, it was a really good game. Like, I knew even then, and it's still one of my favorite games of all time, but, like, dude, if I could do, like, a one-day rewind back to 2012 and get to play Black Ops 2 in its prime again, dude, I would give a lot up to do that, because, like, I really do want to kind of go back and experience a lot of these games again, because the truth is these new games just don't hit like they did anymore. Now, don't get me wrong, you know, I know that there are, of course, good games that are coming out, right? I know that indie studios in particular have been releasing a lot of really great video games in the last few years. And there's even been some mainstream successes. I can't sit here and pretend like everything is a failure or whatever, but it seems like every game that I play or get excited for, man, is just a massive fucking disappointment. And a lot of it really comes down to how the gaming industry has changed. I mean, obviously, like I said, back in the day, you really had one shot with your game. If you didn't hit, you know, that was remembered. But now, if your game sucks at launch, you can try and pull a No Man's Sky and within 5 years try and reverse course and push out all the content that you promised. Which, don't get me wrong, No Man's Sky is actually a great game now that they've done all the necessary updates to make the game an actual video game. But as someone who, that was my first pre-order game where I actually went to a midnight release for. Now, that just really put a sour taste in my mouth when that all happened, man. It seems like the gaming industry now is a lot more about, you know, sell $15 microtransactions, you know, sell the fucking battle pass, prioritize multiplayer content only, and the actual, like, spirit of making video games has been largely pushed to the side for profits. Of course, this is not something across the board. This is something that is, you know, really happening a lot, but I don't think completely across the board. But it's still just so depressing to watch, man. You know, like, all these good games have been ruined by microtransactions and the monetization systems. And, you know, in a lot of ways, the gaming industry has improved. Like, obviously, DLC, we have to say, is a lot better nowadays, right? You know, back in the day, you had to buy an expansion pack. I know a lot of you probably don't remember this, and, you know, I'm kind of in that transitory period, I guess, between, you know, people where, like, I'm old enough to remember going to the store and getting expansion packs for, like, PC games, and it came in the big bulky box, and you had to install it on the CD, and your computer actually had a CD drive. But of course now, you know, the DLC is a free update, and the Battle Pass, which is $10 a month, is how you pay for the DLC. Or you pay for it with a $20 skin where your character looks like a glowing clown with a dildo around his waist, and, you know, you're running around in this war scene, right? That's just kind of how the gaming industry's gone, and, you know, I can't complain, because in all reality, as I take my headset off here, it's really creepy, my fault, but in all reality, these DLC methods obviously are better. They provide more content to these games, they provide them quicker, they provide them on an actual schedule to keep you coming back and playing the game or whatnot, but the way that this stuff has been monetized, and it's been almost, I guess, prioritized over the actual games, just fucking sucks, man. Like, it's just so sad to see video games that could just be phenomenal projects if put out, but instead, like, 40% of the content has been cut away from the game to make DLC out of later. It's really depressing to see that kind of shit happening, and it's just been happening for so long, and there's been, like, disappointment after disappointment in the gaming industry, where, you know, like, these video games get hyped the fuck up, and they are kind of, like, considered the next holy grail of video games or whatever, and then the next thing that you know, they come out and they're unfinished, they're buggy, they're rushed, they should have been delayed another 3 years, the content's not impressive, the gameplay fucking sucks, there's something going on, and it's just such a massive disappointment. Now, I've kind of hypothesized that there might be another reason why this is happening. I think another reason that a lot of these people is because, honestly, man, the games are just not going to be the same as they would if I was a kid. I mean, when I was a kid, I was so excited for the Call of Duty games to come. You know, when Modern Warfare 3 came out, I remember the day that it came out, like I got surprised for having a really good grade and actually turning my performance around in school. My parents came home from work one day with a copy of Modern Warfare 3, and like, dude, I was so fucking hyped. Like, I had never been.
Every company will be a tech company in the future, and data will be the fuel that powers this revolution. Are you ready to become a data proficient employee? Introducing the postgraduate program in data science and business analytics from Great Learning, the University of Texas at Austin, and Great Lakes. Learn in-demand skills by working on projects. Master widely used tools and languages. Get mentorship from experts for industry insights. And get support to achieve career success. With 500 plus hiring partners, 8,000 plus career transitions, and a 48% average salary hike, prepare yourself for the data-driven future. Power ahead in your career with Great Learning. Apply now.
So just excited to play a video game as I was when Modern Warfare 3 came out. Like, I had never even known that I was going to be getting that game, and then I got it, and like, that was just, it was a fucking rush of adrenaline and just excitedness as a child. But, you know, Call of Duty Vanguard, the World War II shooter from Sledgehammer, is coming out in just a few months, and honestly, I didn't even play the alpha for this game. I mean, I have a PlayStation 5, I could have downloaded it, it was free, but like, my interest in it is just so fucking low that like, I could not have been bothered. And this is actually the first time in my life where I'm not checking out a new Call of Duty game, you know, as it's releasing, as they're rolling it out. And I've realized that I've kind of become a gaming old head, because instead of playing the new Call of Duty alpha that came out, you know, I'm just sitting here like, meh, I think I'll play through the GTA 5 story mode for the 7th time. Or meh, I think I'm gonna go back and play Black Ops 2 and Modern Warfare 3's campaigns for gameplay for YouTube. Like, I found myself doing that a lot more now, and I think that a lot of it comes down to the fact that I'm just simply not a kid anymore, man. I mean, when I was a kid, right, like, I would get home from school, and, you know, I would go outside, right, I'd go hang out with my friends, we'd ride bikes through the neighborhood, we would play Pokemon on our DS's and Game Boys and stuff like that. We would play like backyard baseball and like pick up basketball and football. We would like invent war games and stuff in the yards and stuff. That's what we did growing up, man. I know old heads like to make it out like kids after 1977 just didn't go the fuck outside, but we used to literally play outside from like 3 p.m. until like 9 p.m. when the sun literally just wasn't in the sky anymore. And like when you got done doing that, we would all come inside and play video games, you know what I'm saying? We would all hop on PS3 on BO2. And a lot of the times it was our friends who didn't live in the neighborhood that we played with, so we actually got to like talk to all of our friends in the same day. And you know, now as adults, right, like, I mean, I'm a fucking YouTuber, that's what I do. Like, I get to play video games and talk all day, like, that's my job, you know? But obviously all of my friends have quote-unquote regular jobs, right? Like, they're doing whatever in society while I'm bullshitting around on the internet, and they don't have time for video games like that anymore. So I don't really have people to play with. You know, sometimes I play with like fans that I meet online on games. Like about a week ago, I met some fans on Rocket League, and that was pretty cool. We played like 3 or 4 matches together against each other. That was like the best time I've had playing a video game in a minute. But like, I keep reverting back to these years-old games, like even Rocket League, right? Like, I was in high school when Rocket League came out and was free on PlayStation, and I first got into it. I haven't really stuck with a game for very long since, you know, after I graduated high school for sure. And it's kind of sad, right? Because like, there's all these different effects that are really out of my control that just kind of make it not as enjoyable anymore, that make it kind of hard to get into games. And it just fucking sucks, because like, I really hope that this isn't how gaming is going to be forever, right? Like, I really do hope that there's going to be some games out there that really kind of pique all of our interests back into video games, because my friends largely feel the same way. We talk about this like once or twice a week, like, man, what I would do to go back to the days where we were all playing baseball together on the same team, kicking the shit out of everybody, and then we'd go home and blow people out, grown-ass men cussing at us on Black Ops 2. We'd go home and stomp them the fuck out and like, if we could go back to that kind of feeling, man, that would be fucking incredible. But like, there are a few upcoming games then I'm actually excited. For instance, the new Battlefield game looks absolutely phenomenal. This looks like it's going to be the first shooter in years to genuinely capture my attention. Maybe the first shooter since Modern Warfare Remastered that I enjoyed. I kind of liked Black Ops 4 for what it was worth. It was okay. Modern Warfare was playable sometimes too. I will give Splitgate its credit where credit's due. It's a phenomenal game, but I feel like a lot of people are getting burnt out of it really quickly. But we're all really excited for the upcoming Battlefield. I've always actually liked Battlefield ever since I've been playing it. I can't wait for that game to come out. Like, I'm actually really fucking excited. They announced a new Skate title is in the works. That's a game that, like, I just cannot fucking wait, man. The amount of time that me and my friends are gonna sink into this Skate game is unhealthy. And I know this is gonna sound kind of funny, but the rumored Unreal Engine Grand Theft Auto Trilogy remaster, I cannot wait for. GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas in some upscaled graphics on the Unreal Engine. That just, it sounds like it's gonna make, you know, a couple weeks, if not months of my life a lot better. So, I guess in the end, man, this is just a video talking about the gaming industry. I know there's a lot of people out there who like these new games, but man, I'm struggling to enjoy them the same way that I did as, you know, games that came out when I was a kid. And there's probably a lot of different reasons that combine together to make this the case, but it's honestly just depressing, and I wonder if other people really feel the same way. So let me know what you think about the gaming industry and video games in general down below. Thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like. Subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel. Follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at SubTheOptimus. Make sure to check out ShopOpti down below. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, well, just talking about games, and signing out.
Are video games still fun? I don't mean that in the sense of like, is GTA 5 a fun game? It objectively is. Going in as Trevor and going on a rampage still gives me a small rush of serotonin. But now the game's been out for 7 years, and a rampage just isn't as fun as it used to be. Play Alt F4 and go back to do something else. That's where I think the main problem is. Not as fun as it used to be. One of my best friends told me on Discord the other day he was taking a break from Discord and his PC as he found it boring and wouldn't be online as much. At first I was wondering what he meant. Then I started to think about what he said, and I ended up agreeing. Let me give you an idea of what he meant. How often have you finished school or work and you go and sit by your PC or console, so ready to have some fun, and then you just sit there for hours waiting for something to happen? You have games to play, and they're good games, they're just not fun enough. I sit here most days looking at my desktop with hundreds of games on it, and I spend most of my time watching Netflix or YouTube. And I don't know why. I want to play these games, and sometimes I even open them, but I never make it further than an hour before I get bored and go back to endlessly scrolling the TikTok videos. So, I've been rambling about things not being fun. So, fun is a very subjective term. Ask 50 people what they find fun, and you'll get 50 different answers. One may say roller coasters. Another may say getting pegged in the arse. It's very subjective. But I'll throw my 2 cents in, because this is my YouTube channel, and my opinion is the only opinion that truly matters around here. Something is fun when nostalgia, or just going to bed with a grin on your face. I remember a few years ago, me and my friends spent hours playing tag, but not the actual game, like the Man vs. Machine. I used to play it on a MacBook, and could only play one map because that was the only one that would load an Apple product. It got so bad one night, we ate all my day until the sun came up the next day. My dad was furious, but I didn't care. I had fun. Pure, childlike, unadulterated fun. That was a good one. I wish I could live that night again, because life was easier then. I didn't really care about the Nostalgia is such a double-edged sword when you get older. On the one hand, fondly, but on the other hand, it reminds you of good times in the past, and it makes you sad, because you can't have those times again. Not saying that there can't be any good times in games nowadays. Me and my friends discovered a game called The Forest a while back, and the whimsy came back. We had the biggest smiles on our faces for days. Building huge bases, fighting gruesome cannibals, and just generally being idiots. If you want a game to play with your friends, I highly suggest playing The Forest. It's the most fun I've had with my friends in a long time. And now we almost never touch the game, except from when we all say we should play it again. We play it for a day straight and then never again, because it doesn't bring back the memories we used to have about the game. And that's what the problem is with modern day video games. They don't leave a good enough memory. This is the problem I have with Pokemon. Every time a new Pokemon game would come out, I would buy it. I would never know why, because some of the recent ones aren't even that good. I've recently realised it's because I'm trying to bring back those memories of Diamond and Pearl that I had on my DS as a kid. Not knowing anything about type weaknesses or strategy, I'm just solely training my starter to a...
A lot of people don't believe me when I say I was working in a job 3 years ago.
If I asked you the question, what is man's greatest invention? What would your answer be? There's a lot of options. Would it be fire? Because it gives us warmth, protection, and the ability to cook our meals. Or perhaps you would pick the wheel, because it's the driving force behind the beginnings of trade, commerce, and travel. While both of these are excellent choices, most of the time when we think about the greatest inventions of mankind, we tend to forget one of the most important ones of all: money. But unlike man's other great inventions, money is immaterial. Maybe that's why we don't often think of it in the same breath as some of the other great inventions. Things like fire and a wheel are tangible, but not money. Money is merely an idea, an illusion whose value is non-existent, only determined by the importance we place on it, or at least money as we know it today. However, the fact that money is an illusion does not in any way undermine its importance. Before we created money, we were forced to trade goods and services directly in what we refer to as the barter system. People exchanging goods and services for other goods and services in return. Because there was no arbitrary value placed on these items, every single trade was determined by what each party was willing to give up for something that they wanted. It was kind of like a game. If I wanted some of your vegetables for dinner but I only bear cattle, I would have to give you one of my animals in exchange for a bag of vegetables. If I wanted shoes to wear but I only made tents, I would have had to give you a tent in exchange for a pair of shoes. And immediately you can already see where we make problems with this system of trade. It's the asymmetry. There's no way I wouldn't feel cheated having to exchange an entire living space for simple food. Because there was no standardized medium of exchange, it was very difficult to get two people who needed things from each other to come to an agreement. Having to wait until a double coincidence of once where two people need the exact opposite thing at the same time was also very difficult and inefficient. And that wasn't all. You see, our money is not only a medium of exchange, it's also considered a store of value. And before the invention of money, some people could never store their wealth for no fault of their own. Think about the farmer who sells tomatoes and the man who makes tents. The man who makes tents can create an entire village of real estate and barter it out with anyone who needs a place to rest their head all year long, and he would probably cash out on that. But the farmer who sells tomatoes can only barter when tomatoes are in season. And because tomatoes are perishable goods, he cannot keep them for a long period of time. So, although he would be putting in the same effort into his business as the tent maker, there's absolutely no way for him to remain wealthy all year long. There's also the problem of having something that only very few people want. Nowadays, when starting a business, you're often told to find a niche, a small group of people who are very interested in what you have to offer. Before money was a thing, that advice would have you left with nothing worth bartering. The people who had the most were those who owned things that everyone wanted. Things like weapons, animal skin, and salt. But then since everyone knew that everyone wanted these things, they started buying them even if they didn't need them at the time, just so they could trade with them later. And so commodity money became a thing. People would exchange goods and services for the most common items, like salt or weapons, and just use that to trade for what they want from someone else. From salt and weapons to tiny collectibles like shells and beads, humanity had found a better way to trade and transact. Instead of exchanging goods and services for goods and services you may not need at the time, you can exchange your goods and services for arbitrary objects to act as placeholders of value, an IOU, or IOU. After that, you can use these placeholders to get goods and services you actually want from someone else. The idea was brilliant, so brilliant that the entire world slowly moved away from the barter system to the money trading system. But there was still one problem with this medium of exchange. You see, for money to be worth anything, it needs to be scarce. The more available something is, the lesser its implied value. That's basic economics. If everyone can get their hands on something, it can't be worth that much, right? So things like sand or shells that you could easily pick up on any beach weren't really a good measure of value. As a result, around the year 770 BC, the first metal coins were created in China. As a sort of homage, the Chinese made miniature versions of the tools that were once regarded as currency. They made the coins circular so that it was easy to reach into your pocket and take them out without hurting your fingers. Then they cast the coins in bronze. This was it. Money was finally worth something. You couldn't just go to a beach somewhere and pick up bronze. It was scarce. It had value. At this time, money wasn't yet an illusion. The value of a coin was determined by the value of the metal the coin was made out of. If you had a coin that was made from 1 gram of gold, it was worth 1 gram of gold. You could easily measure it and see for yourself that it is, in fact, 1 gram of gold. However, kings and rulers quickly discovered the power of money. They realized that the more of these tiny precious metals you had, the more power you could control. And so in 600 BC,